MedTech's next growth phase is here. We got billion-dollar acquisitions to strategic spinouts, new funding signals from Q3. There's no better time to be in hardware than now, because when you have really good hardware, it allows you to capture data in a very unique way and an automatic way.
This is just the start of something new here, and it's super exciting, and it feels so futuristic to say incisionless surgery. We're moving away from the traditional approach for chronic pain, which has been spinal cord stimulation, and it's a multi-billion-dollar market.
You can't replace part of the brain.
Like, you treat them the same.
Source of truth for the MedTech industry.
Coexists with the puppets.
Robot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the MedTech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the $90 billion company. They had help apply a lot of things.
State of MedTech with your host, Omar and Khateeb.
All right, here we go. Happy October. Pumpkin patch season is underway. Family cards. So you went to a pumpkin patch recently with your family?
Yeah, we took my boy to the first ever family pumpkin patch trip, and expectedly a 9-month-old is just amazed by colors, and that's about it. But mom was happy, so that was a real victory.
You should enjoy that, because at some point he's going to get older, and then he's going to start wreaking all havoc on the pumpkin patch. Like my son, who's 3, decided that he just wants to pick as many of them up and throw them. So
we'll report back in 2 years and see how I'm doing.
Perfect. We should probably do the show, right? Okay.
If you want.
Welcome back, everyone. We know you like hearing that cold open. Another edition of This Month in MedTech in partnership with our trusted market intel experts over at LSI. We're joined by the market intel czar himself, Nick Talamantes. Nick, good to see you, my friend. Glad we got this back on the docket.
Yeah.
The last one you had to do a 2-for-1, August and September in one. It's because that European summer throws us off, But yeah, we got some good stuff. So this episode, we're going to be diving into October's top developments across MedTech. We got billion-dollar acquisitions to strategic spinouts, new funding signals from Q3. Also, we're going to highlight insights pulled straight from Compass, LSI's market intelligence platform, also the same one that I use, I love, and reveal the new Q4 Hot 25 list. October was definitely a defining month in MedTech. Boston Scientific expanded its neuromodulation dominance. J&J reshaped its orthopedic business. Shout out to Stuart Simpson, who called this actually a few months ago. Stuart is the CEO of Petal Surgical, and he called it out. He said, he's like, Tim Schmidt and J&J, they got some really interesting things going on. Keep them on the radar. And lo and behold, we'll dive into that in a little bit. And of course, some funding patterns to show how capital is being consolidated into fewer, higher quality rounds. So let's get right into it. Trending stories and the numbers. The first thing, really exciting news. Boston Scientific gets Nalu Medical. Nalu is spelled N-A-L-U. I don't know what Nalu means, but it's a good name. So they made an acquisition, $533 million buyout of Nalu, underscores this shift towards peripheral nerve stimulation. Compass data shows PNS is expected to grow at a pretty impressive CAGR. I'm a big fan of that. 18.9% CAGR. It's really impressive over the next 5 years. The acquisition also follows Boston Scientific's purchase of Axonics earlier in 2025, signaling a long-term bet on neuromodulation as a growth driver. So let's talk about it. Nick, your take on it. There's a couple of things that obviously I get excited about regarding this deal, but let's start with you first. So what's your take on this?
Sure. I mean, I think that this is great. We recently published an edition of the numbers all about this deal. When we saw it happen, we just dived into everything that was going on here. This acquisition underscores an early investment in Nalu Medical back from 2017. So Boston Scientific made a bet a while ago, and now that bet is paying off as the team has achieved really outstanding revenue growth over the past, let's say, like 3 or 4 years. And just kind of walk you all through it, maybe even visualize it. I do want to hijack the screen here real quick. Let's see if I can figure out your podcasting software here. So yeah. All right. I think, nope, that's the wrong company. I figured it out, guys. We've got Nalu Medical's profile here in Compass pulled up, and you can actually see, let's see if I make it bigger. You can see their quarterly revenue growth, their annual revenue growth, and the amount that revenue has increased year over year. It's impressive. So the company has identified this big opportunity in patients wanting less invasive neurostimulation to treat chronic pain. It's a huge global issue, huge issue in the United States. As you mentioned, that compound annual growth rate for the number of procedures just being performed in the U.S. is quite substantial. And this company is doing a great job of capturing that market share. So Boston Scientific, always looking for ways to make acquisitions that align within their portfolio today, are adding to their neuromodulation portfolio. And I think it's a great move. So I'll release the screen share there and then let you share what's got you excited about all this, Omar.
Yeah, there's a few things. So first, and I might be, I think I'm accurate on these numbers. So Boston Scientific is one of my favorite strategics in terms of their M&A strategy. They've done, I think, at least 6 acquisitions just in the last 12 months. It might be a little bit more, but Charlie Atlan, who's their senior vice president for strategy and business development, just seems to really have a pulse on the market.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. I could be wrong here, Nick, but I think he's the most active buyer in all of MedTech. And so the reason why that's really exciting for me is that, for our industry to be able to grow, attract new capital, there has to be really healthy M&A, right? Mm-hmm. IPO window is starting to open up, which is good, but I think investors want to see that there's options for M&A to happen. I think there are 2 routes for that right now. Number one is a lot of the large strategics are spitting out divisions that are becoming kind of like mini strategics. We'll get into that later with one of the other trending reports. And the other side of it is to actually see that there's strategics out there that are, they have a very healthy and active M&A, right? And Boston Scientific is one of them. So that's one thing that got me excited about this. The second thing is as I like to call him, good old Uncle Ray, man. Ray Cohen was chair. I think he was chairman of the board for Nalu. Yeah. This is his 3rd acquisition that he successfully ushered in the last 2 years. So it was Axonics. Then he had a second one. Was it Sonovi?
Yes.
See, I can't even. Yes. Yeah, I can't even keep track of them.
Right?
Sonovi was a half billion. This one's a $500 million. Kestra, he helped to go public. The reason why I get excited from this, yeah, sure, he's a friend of mine. I respect him a lot as a friend and a mentor. But the other side of it is that I want to see more investors like Ray, because he is successfully going to the boards of these companies and helping them and putting them in the best position possible to get acquired within a short period of time, which then frees him up to go do that again at another company. And yeah, sure, ultimately, it's great for shareholders and everything, but if we really think about it, it's, the patients, benefit at the end, right? Because a lot of these companies, they need these acquisition or these transactions to happen so that they can plug in and scale to reach more patients and get those economies of scale working for them. And so seeing somebody like Ray Cohen, and every investor has a max number of board chairs that they can be on or boards. And so he does a few of these, helps the acquisition happen, frees himself up to do more, right? And so it's really exciting to see that. Congratulations to Ray and obviously to the team at Nalu, but I love seeing stuff like this,
Yeah. This is excellent. I think all around great move. You're right. I think in 12 months, it's about 6 acquisitions for Boston Scientific. I think 3 of them this year have been in some sort of neuromodulation play. So the company is clearly looking at ways to grow their already pretty healthy growing neuromodulation business. So I love to see it. I think it underscores what we're seeing overall in neuromodulation. We talk about it. Patients want less invasive. We're moving away from sort of the traditional approach for chronic pain, which has been spinal cord stimulation, and it's a multi-billion-dollar market, but there are some severe limitations of the technology, invasiveness being probably the number one. And now you've got a less invasive approach. Patients are going for it. The procedure volumes speak for themselves. And to your point, Boston Scientific is now going to be able to come in as, I believe, the only strategic with a PNS technology and take it to scale. So they're really going to go in and blow this thing up in a positive way.
Yeah, and hopefully Boston Scientific also serves as a great example to the rest of the industry and other strategics about like how they should be thinking about M&A, right? And biz dev, So really exciting news. And, what's also interesting, is that, they've invested in some other companies, correct? That are like in the same realm that are really interesting. So Saluda, Nalu Medical, Setpoint, which is a really interesting one. That was actually our pick for favorite company. I think it was my pick. I think we both picked it as one of our favorite deals a month ago.
It's an exciting one, right? And spoiler alert, they're going to show up again in our list. They still stay in that top 25 list of ours. So
I think they're doing cool things. And I think what's interesting about the neuromodulation space is that it sort of signals more and more of sort of less invasive nature of devices. And more importantly, like I think the other side of it is that as you become less and less invasive, you become more closer to a therapeutic than a procedure. And in that case, now we're going into pharma, right? Or at least competing directly with pharma, which I think is great. I have no problem with pharma. I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm not anti-pharma, but I think it's better for clinicians and patients to have options of pharmaceutical approaches, non-pharmaceutical approaches. And so this is kind of a really exciting thing for devices because I think, again, benefit for the patient, but more importantly, will bring in a lot of interesting talent and capital into the space when we start doing things like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, on that note, let's go on to the next one, which is again another interesting like trend we're seeing, which is J&J spinning out their entire orthopedic division. So J&J MedTech is essentially spinning off its $9.2 billion orthopedics unit, otherwise known as DePuy. And this is following a wave of strategic refocusing across major MedTech players. We've seen like Stryker spin off their entire spine division. We've seen Medtronic spin off their diabetes division and so on and so forth. So this move really mirrors portfolio strategies by Stryker and Medtronic as companies pivot towards, let's say, faster growing markets like cardiovascular and robotics. I'll get it started and I want Nick, you to obviously provide some color commentary. I think this is a great thing. And the reason why is that going back to this conversation about we have to have healthy M&A in our industry, right? There's just no other way around it. And you can't have healthy M&A if the M&A activity is between a tiny handful of companies that are so large that the bureaucratic red tape takes a long time to get through. And B is that like when there's just you're competing with like just a couple other companies, these strategics can like either unconsciously or very consciously, knowingly say, we're just going to sit by and wait and get these companies on a deal. Now that these strategic are spinning off, these divisions. So like, DePuy being a $9.2 billion division, that's like a miniature strategic, right? And then we saw companies like Inari when Inari was on its own, which was, I think, trading at like, I could be wrong about this, but I think at its peak was like a $3 or $4 billion market cap, maybe a little bit higher. They were making their own acquisitions. And so the interesting thing about this is if you think about it, DePuy in the past was always judged in relation to the rest of portfolio in J&J, which includes the pharma division, cardiovascular, all these like high growth areas where you can't directly compare them. You're not comparing apples to apples. So now being separate, DePuy is going to be judged purely as an orthopedic company in relation to other orthopedic companies, which also means its ability to make acquisitions is going to be different. I think it's just better. It's just overall better for our industry. I want to see more of this stuff happen where, divisions get spun out, right? And we end up with mini strategics. And I'm TMing that. You heard it here first. If you ever hear this term mini strategics, came from this show.
I like it. Well, yeah, I was just taking a look through while you're talking and I was listening through Compass and looking at like M&A activity this year. And I agree with you. We are starting to see not just, overall we've seen M&A up this year, but we're also seeing these mini strategics or these mid-size, I like yours, mini strategics, we'll stick with it, making these small acquisitions, particularly in the spine and in the orthopedic space. So this is going to be really interesting. I think Stuart Simpson, we'll mention him again here. I saw a post from him saying that this is going to be great for innovation and buying it up, because now DePuy has to consider how it's going to compete on its own with Stryker, who is ascendant in the orthopedics market. I mean, we made the prediction that Stryker is going to become the leading orthopedic company. This is something that leadership at DePuy is going to have to figure out a strategy for. Man, like I'm almost overwhelmed. There's so much we could probably say just to this specific story. Are there any other thoughts about this that really kind of stand out to you, Omar?
The only thing that stands out to me is like, one is like, DePuy has the Velis robot, which has a little north of like per compass 500 installments, compared to like Stryker's Mako, and then Zimmer's Rosa, they also have Monogram. They each have like over 2,000 placements, right? And so there's opportunity for DePuy to grow. What I do not want to see, I would be like super like disappointed. I don't want to see DePuy get acquired by like Zimmer or Stryker. I don't want to see that happen. Like that's just not the route.
Yeah, and it kind of breaks from what we've been seeing. It would be a mega deal in M&A.
It would be mega. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
In a really long time.
That's exactly right. And I don't want to see like, I'm not going to bring it up on this show because I feel like we'll get off topic, but there's some mega deals that happened in the last like 10 to 15 years in med device that did not make sense, and they did not work out at all. Yeah. At all. And so, if Stryker or Zimmer buys DePuy, conservatively, we're talking about really conservatively, a $20 to $30 billion buyout. Yeah. Like conservatively speaking. Yeah. And so I don't want to see that happen. I don't think it makes anything better, and as we've seen, like a lot of these strategics are just not good at like these transformational deals, like I feel like what would make sense is like a transformational deal that like also happens to be a tuck-in, right? Which hypothetically that could put DePuy in that position. But again, like, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to see. Let's just like I don't want to talk anymore about this. I don't want to see it happen. DePuy to the team that's at DePuy, fight like hell. Get ready to hit the market hard. And there's like a lot of really talented people I know over at DePuy. So I'm rooting for you guys. Get going, get some traction, and go buy some companies. You might I don't know if Uncle Ray's got some orthopedic in his portfolio, but like
I'm not sure about that. Yeah, get the robot strategy in line is all I'm gonna say. Like this, orthopedics is a robotics dominated market now. So DePuy, we gotta figure Velis out here.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Any more thoughts and highlights on this deal before we move on?
The only thing I'll say is, I feel like I'm almost just like a journalist at some times where I'm just reporting on what other people have said. But I saw a really interesting comment from Steve Bell about how this could potentially signal J&J making a complete exit from MedTech. This could be like the early sign of it.
It's possible. Okay.
Yeah. It's interesting, right?
I should make a post about this. I'm going to tell you why that's probably not likely.
Okay.
Pharma is going through its own tough times, right? And more importantly, I think that like we're all starting, the public is now understanding that like with pharma, right? Drugs don't have like a GPS homing device that like when you take like an NSAID or something, it knows exactly where it goes. It just goes all over your body. And so drug delivery is going to be really important. Interventions and therapeutics are going to be really important because at the end of the day, the public is demanding these things. A lot of people are becoming very sensitive to this idea of, being on drugs, lifelong drugs. I mean, look, for as crazy of a blockbuster GLP-1s have been, and they're, it's not showing any signs of slowing down. There's also like negative effects of these GLP-1s, right? I don't want to get into that, but like, so I think that J&J will keep some of its MedTech, probably like, the cardiovascular division, because that's like fast and growing. Maybe there's some like drug delivery things that can be involved as well. But like, I don't see J&J divesting all of MedTech, you know?
It's going to be interesting. You've got orthopedics.
They might separate. You know what they might do? They might do what GE did. GE separated its like MedTech healthcare division. Yeah. So J&J MedTech might separate as like a legal entity, right? And have its own stock ticker and everything. Maybe that, but it's still going to be J&J.
Okay. We'll see what happens. We'll see a few years from now.
That said, I know that said, here's the other thing is like, and I think we have it on the docker. Maybe I believe we have it, but like, look what happened just recently with Hologic and private equity. Private equity is starting to come into MedTech and healthcare. Like, so that's a possibility, you know?
Yep.
So it's going to be an interesting times, man. You know,
the story continues. It's not over yet.
No, definitely. Well, all right, going on to the rest of the docket. Q3 MedTech investment recap. So big headline here, which is essentially just fewer deals, bigger bets. So Compass data showed $2.28 billion raised total in Q3 2025 across 83 funding rounds. So here's the sad thing is that it's a 39% drop in volume, but stable total capital. The shift is that fewer early stage rounds, more late stage and revenue backed deals. Key data, let me pull this up, is later stage funding was up 31%, early stage funding down 65%. The average deal size rose to 30.4 million. Biggest takeaway from this is like investors are doubling down on proven performers rather than high risk startups. Let me give you my 2 cents on this, and I want to pass it back to you, Nick. This is exactly what happens when venture deploys a lot of capital and they knew they're going to pay for this. And I'm not talking about venture in healthcare. I'm talking about venture as a whole. You know, in 2020 and 2021, exits they remained depressed from there. And then when that happens, when you're raising your next fund, LPs are going to be, you know, really strict about how that capital is being deployed. And so more venture is saying, hey, we want, if it's not a PMA, commercial stage, revenue generating companies, growth stage, etc. So now you're a venture with like a lowercase v, not a capital V, right? And I think that this was also shown in I saw this in Compass, but also John Norris over at HSBC and his team put together a report that I always reference. Actually, I referenced it in my LSI talk. It was a slide I had where essentially from 2023 to 2024, total funding in healthcare went from like, I think 43 billion to 52 billion. Don't quote me on those exact numbers, but it's like a healthy 27-28% bump. But then the total number of deals rose by like barely 2%. So it's like more money, but for fewer deals, right?
Yeah.
So it's a concerning trend because like, who's going to fund early stage medtech? This is where I'm hoping through this show and through what we're doing over at MarketCraft, we can help more of these companies reach new investors from the tech side, from private family offices, etc. You know, there's just got to be like new ways to raise money, right?
Yeah, I think that overall, I was going to make a joke. If you had passed it earlier, I'll still make the joke. The investment community, they also took the summer off. You know, we took a month off for this month of MedTech. Investors kind of seems like they took a quarter off here. But I think from the data that we're seeing already that this is just a summer slump. And, you know, Q4 is already off to a very strong start. We've seen some really impressive deals. Histosonics, $250 million. I mean, like, I don't want to just go mega deals, but across the board, we've seen a rebound. It looked like we had a really rough July and September, if you look at it month to month for the quarter. And then October has already been a much better recovery in terms of deal volume. But I agree, and I'll echo your concern, your sentiment that early stage fundraising is critical, because without it, how do you get another Nalu Medical? You've got to get a company up to a certain point so that a strategic will come in, make an investment, and then potentially acquire them down the way. Not every deal is going to be a build to buy. So we need to get smart. We need to be smart about the companies and the capital we're deploying to them to help them bring great technologies and continue to innovate in healthcare.
Yeah, and I think the other side of this is that like having really good science and data is like table stakes. That's like the bare minimum. And I think what investors need to see now, and I speak to a lot of investors on the show, and I understand this, is that they need leading indicators to inspire confidence. And that's why I think like, like at MarketCraft, I think half of our portfolio of companies that we work with are pre-FDA, pre-commercial. And part of the reason for that is you need to start thinking sooner and earlier about not only driving clinical adoption, but building an early pipeline. A lot of founders are like, we want to focus on early market release. That's fine. But when you're trying to raise money, you need to be able to show like qualitatively and quantitatively like a pipeline to an investor and say, hey, like we're not going to be commercial for the next 2 years, but like here's our pipeline of who we talk to, who we've demoed the product, their feedback, who's interested, etc. Because now an investor's like, okay, well, if I put money into this thing and they make it to commercial, right, then they actually have a landscape and they've engineered a market to sell to. The other side of it is also when you speak to a strategic, right, that gives you more leverage so that they know like what accounts you're going after and what's at stake, so that way you have like a little bit more opportunity to either get a strategic to lead around, potentially acquire you. So I think that's really important for, shameless plug. If you're a founder or CEO listening to this and you want to connect with us to learn more, just simple URL, just growmymedtech.com, www.growmymedtech.com. Just book time with us and we'll be happy to talk to you about that and share like what we've learned and what we can do for you.
So overall, the takeaway is, talk to the right people, make yourself known to the strategics early.
Yes, and like let me give you I don't want to like shamelessly plug like what MarketCraft is doing, but I'll just give you a great example of a company. Sure. We have a robotics company. They're pre-FDA, pre-commercial. They're raising a Series A right now, okay, or Series A2 maybe. We did thought leadership, putting out content, etc. They went to their very first conference, okay. They put up a GoPro in their booth just to capture like a time lapse of the thing. So they showed us a slide of this picture of like, 8 people getting a demo. And I'm like, great guys, you got like a lot of people in the booth for a demo. I'm like, well, we should, post this as a recap. They're like, no, we can't post this photo. I'm like, why is that? Then they showed the next slide. They're like, we just showed this to the board. Those 8 people, they had like little circles around them. They were 3 different strategics that just happened to end up in the booth at the exact same time. To see a demo of the product, right? And so that company has leverage, and I think at the end of the day, as a CEO, as a founder, you have to be thinking about leverage at all times. How do I have more leverage with investors I'm trying to raise money with? How do I have more leverage with strategics who might be looking at me? How do I have more leverage with the clinical community who might be thinking about adopting the product, but there's like benefits of adopting earlier on to be like a thought leader, right? So you got to think about all these things from now. And again, at the end of the day, it gives optionality. That's the most important thing. And I think like you can't be thinking about getting leverage and optionality after you go commercial, right? That's like, it's like really late. And again, I'll go back, forget what I have to say about this. Look at what Uncle Ray did at Axonics. Ray Cohen spent like 1 year out from commercial, hired top salespeople, started training them so they're ready. They started marketing early, all these different things. And the moment they went commercial, they hit it so hard. So hard. I think they were the fastest growing company by revenue that year. Don't quote me on that. They were fastest growing something that year in America, right? Probably either by revenue or just or stock or something. But like that worked out really well for them. So I would think about that, about how do you get leverage as early as possible, sooner rather than later. Because it gives you optionality, know?
Ray gave a great talk at, I believe it was LSI last year, or it was sometime around when the deal happened with Boston Scientific acquiring Axonics. He gave us like the history of the deal, and it's fascinating. Just again, to your point, to echo it, he was building a commercial team, I believe, before they were commercial, as you said, and look what it did for them. He was preparing.
I mean, he had like highly paid salespeople on the bench for a year, but just training, engaging the market, getting ready, you know? So, food for thought, my friends. All right, moving on to round out our trending stories by the numbers. Stryker and Siemens, the stroke robotics partnership. So Stryker and Siemens Health and Ears are essentially co-developing a neurovascular robotics platform for stroke intervention, which combines Stryker's device expertise with Siemens imaging tech. The market insight straight from the Compass. Stroke procedures are expected to rise 8.3% from 2024 to 2029, with a $50 billion annual indirect cost burden. The reason why this matters is that if robotics can reduce treatment time and variability, it could revolutionize neurovascular care. So, Nick, your take on it, I'll provide my take in a second.
Yeah. So my thoughts on this is, I think this is also super exciting, and it's crazy that all of this has just happened in October. Like this big acquisition, the divestment of J&J's orthopedics division, this partnership between two powerhouses in the MedTech industry. I've shared my thoughts over the episodes of this month in MedTech on robotics and my thoughts about it. And in general, I think stroke and robotics, while there are certainly challenges, I won't try to mitigate the challenges of delivering stroke care with robotics, but the potential upside is huge. I mean, even if you just look at the United States and how stroke is managed today, it's not really well managed. And the biggest gap is just getting access to timely stroke care. And I think that robotics can do that, whether that be in leveling up a surgeon so that they can perform a very complex surgery like clot removal, or, if the tech advances to a certain point where you can do it telerobotically, now you can just have robots at local community hospitals that are controlled by some of the best and brightest. So I think this is great. And then I'll just end with Stryker going in on another robot. I would say just watch out now to everybody who is in neurovascular robots. Like, they're going to come in and they're going to own this thing.
Yeah, and there are two companies that come to mind because again, I think the key here that's really interesting as a business model is doing procedures teleremotely in terms of telemedicine, so that you have these robots in different stroke centers, like in rural areas, suburban areas, etc. So like somebody has a stroke, you have like a neurovascular physician who's on call, who might, through their computer have access to 3 or 5 or 10 of these stroke centers. So that way patient gets to that stroke center as quickly as possible. It doesn't have to be driven into like a main center. And then the intervention happens. There's a reason why they say time is brains, because like the more time that passes by, the more damage is done. What's interesting though, and I'm gonna plug in a company that I really love. One, because I think their founders are doing such a good job storytelling to the market, like the behind the scenes, like in terms of like showing their revenue, their AR, their accounts receivable, like all kinds of things. That's Robert Hamilton and Neurosignal. The reason why I'm mentioning that is that if you think about the intervention side, one of the things that's also important is mapping the cerebral vasculature as a key step, in terms of like figuring out the diagnosis, the monitoring, the targeting. And so when you do that, then you have sort of a full cycle of stroke care and treatment, right? So aside from the intervention, you need something that also helps with understanding how the stroke happened, why it happened, etc. What they do at Neurosignal is that they have a robotic platform that is essentially autonomously collecting and analyzing cerebral blood flow data. So that way it would complement those kind of efforts that you use on the intervention side. And I think those are the kind of like tech partnerships I want to see happen more of, which is, you have this Stryker and Siemens partnership on the intervention side, but there are like really great startups like Neurosignal that's commercial, that's driving adoption, that help complete like a full picture of like stroke care. So that way you don't have these things like completely separate.
Yeah, I agree. You've got to be able to build the map of where you're going before you can even think about delivering the intervention, how you deliver that intervention. Yes, there's certainly a lot of opportunities there, but great point about having just the full suite. There's going to be a lot involved here in this new era of interventional stroke care. And so there's going to be a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, 100%. And so again, I think like the big thing about this sort of third wave of technology is the importance of partnerships, in the sense that delivering care has become more and more complicated. And the only way you can go really far is through these partnerships. I mean, we see it in the tech side, with like OpenAI partnering with NVIDIA, and like all these partnerships are happening. I know there's like a lot of memes floating around as to like, the nature of that. But again, the reason why is that like in order to deliver like really outsized value, right, to the market, you have to do these partnerships. You can't just do it all on your own. I mean, same with Apple in terms of the suite of its products. Like there's so many different suppliers, partnerships, etc. they use to develop and deliver their products.
It's all about the ecosystem.
All about the ecosystem. So now going on to the segment of the show that I was really looking forward to, I was excited about, which is the LSI Q4 Hot 25 list. I feel like I need that.
Right.
So, the Hot 25. So, okay, essentially each quarter, the LSI team essentially identifies 25 startups showing up strong growth, funding momentum, and technological differentiation. So these are the companies to watch in 2025 heading into 2026. So we're going to highlight a few of them from Q4. And where can they see this full list?
Yeah, so you can see the full list in Compass as well as just on LinkedIn. We'll put it in the show notes or something like that, a direct link to where you can go check out the list, because we're not going to read off all 25, but I think we have the top 3 just to kind of to put out there to wet your whistle, get you interested in checking out who else is rounding out our list here this quarter.
Absolutely. And who doesn't want their whistle wet when it comes to hot MedTech deals? That's bad. Yeah. That's a bad one. We lost like half the listeners on that joke.
I'm working on convincing the team about a name change there.
Really bad dad joke.
Your imagination could run with that.
There we go. Cue the Nelly song. All right. So we're going to highlight 3 of them. Nick and I are both going to pick our favorite ones. So number 1, Setpoint Medical, developing an implantable bioelectronic neuromodulation device that stimulates the vagus nerve to activate the body, get this, anti-inflammatory reflex. So initially targeting moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis in patients who have had inadequate response to biologics, with further trials underway in Crohn's disease and potentially multiple sclerosis. Next one we got is AI Doc. They've been around for a while. Great company developing an AI-powered imaging platform that automatically flags critical findings. As an example, intracranial hemorrhage, pulmonary embolism, spine fractures, and CT, MRI, and X-ray scans, and prioritizes urgent cases for radiologists. Targeting acute and time-sensitive diagnostic workflows in emergency trauma and then routine imaging environments. And then the last one, again, this is of the Hot 25 list. This is just 3 random companies that we picked. BioLink Incorporated.
It's the top 3.
Yeah. Please, my mistake. These are the top 3 of the Hot 25. BioLink Incorporated, developing a fully autonomous needle-free intradermal, just beneath the skin, wearable biosensor patch, which is called the BioLink Shine, that integrates glucose activity and sleep data in real time, targeting people with type 2 diabetes, not on insulin, and more broadly, metabolic health monitoring beyond traditional continuous glucose monitors. Before we pick our top one, Nick, how's it decided that these are the top 3?
Yeah. Let me walk you through the scoring, the algorithm. Since it's not a total black box. No, we could totally get all nerdy about how these companies are scored and assessed. But essentially what we're looking at is fundraising history over time, and not just like total amount, but like how do their rounds compare to their peers? Is this a Series A round that, just as an example, that is outsized compared to their competitors? Who are the investors in these companies? Do they have premium? I hate to use the word premium, but are there notable investors involved that get involved with exciting companies? We look at the team. Does this team have any entrepreneurial experience? Stage of the company, commercial, pre-commercial. And then we, of course, are going in and assessing both the market opportunity and the tech differentiation. So these factors, everything gets scored effectively. And then the analyst team goes in and reviews and says, yeah, that looks about right there. You get a list of 25 companies. It's all on a scale of 100. And basically, all of these companies are going to be in the 80s or 90s, which is exceptionally high. Now, I will say, just to familiarize people with the scoring, a score of like 65 is pretty good. Like if you're a company with a 65, like that's exceptional. But these guys really do just, again, these companies would all be in the 80s or 90s based off of the scoring for this recent list. And so truly like exceptional companies. We've seen companies with these scores go on to get acquired. Nalu Medical had a score of, I believe, 84 out of 100. So just to kind of, again, give you an idea of how the scoring system kind of leads you to identifying great companies that are ones to watch. We'll just call it that. So we're excited to be launching this into Compass in the near future. So everyone is going to be able to go in and just assess companies and how their scoring changes over time in the platform. So, Omar,
All
favorite
right.
company? Do we? I mean, I feel like every episode
This is
of
a tough one. This is a tough one. So I'm picking one based on. This is a tough one because like I love Setpoint Medical. Setpoint's not my pick, by the way. Setpoint, the reason why I love them again is it's a really interesting way of introducing a electric therapeutic for like autoimmunity. Like who would have thought, right? That's like super interesting,
Yeah.
I'm going with BioLink on this, and the reason why is that I like seeing more medical device companies, not pharma, medical device companies, starting to move into the consumer space, and more importantly, starting to link areas of health that we all know is important, but that have been sort of siloed out. And so being able to target type 2 diabetes, not just on insulin, but also like metabolic health monitoring, such as like, sleep and other things, I think is really, really important, because then, the key here is like, for me, I have all these books from the time that I was in medical school. They don't really talk about the link between, let's say, insulin sensitivity and the quality of sleep you get, et cetera. And so when a company introduces, and remember that I said this here, like we see a lot of AI right now and software and everything, there's no better time to be in hardware than now. Because when you have really good hardware, it allows you to capture data in a very unique way and an automatic way. And at the end of the day, that's what you need to win on the software AI side, right? And so with BioLink's device, they have a very unique way to capture new and interesting data that, if presented the right way, can change behavior, improve quality, and then help with patient outcomes. So that's my pick. It was a tough one. But that's my pick.
I love it, and I would completely echo, and I feel like I've said that a few times, but I like the point you made about the direct-to-consumer element. I think that is not going to be lost upon people who are potentially looking at acquiring BioLink down the line. If you look at sort of the mandate or one of the missions of many of the strategics in MedTech right now, it is trying to identify ways to get directly to the consumer. Look at Dexcom, look at Abbott with their diabetes devices. They want to find a way to get it right to you without having to go through a prescriber. You want this device, you buy this device. So I think that's going to be very compelling for them. I think it's a great pick. I went a little bit further down the list for my pick here. But I really like Galvanize.
That's another good one. I mean, similar to Setpoint, again, like using a very interesting way of using electrical stimulation to solve a problem. But yeah, tell us why you like Galvanize.
Well, I've been keeping my eye on them for quite some time. I saw that they spun off their technology, and they sold assets in the cardio space to focus specifically on respiratory and, I believe, solid tumors now at Galvanize, which I love. As great as PFA and treating arrhythmias are, and it's a huge opportunity, it's increasingly crowded. So for them to now focus on the pulmonary, respiratory area, lung, and solid tumors, I think it's a great approach. And then recently, Intuitive made a little investment in Galvanize, and I know that an investment from Intuitive does not signal and acquisition. The former CEO said at LSI this year that they see themselves as a port, not just an acquirer of technologies, but a channel for which technologies can be deployed through their systems. And I think that Galvanize plus Ion is a very interesting combination there. So that's my pick there. It's a great list of companies. If you want the quick recap and you're not going to check it out, very strong list of companies when we're looking at heart failure. Heart failure is the big standout here in this list of companies.
Yeah.
So,
but again, I mean, I have such a strong bias towards BioLink in terms of,
yeah,
it's
a great choice.
I mean, if you think about how interesting that is, they have a device that automatically is tracking physical activity and sleep to share like how your day-to-day actions are essentially impacting your glucose levels. Mm-hmm. Not just, and again, because like, again, the simplified way of looking at glucose is like, oh, what am I eating and how does that impact glucose, right? There's a lot more to impacting glucose and insulin sensitivity, that, the activity you're doing or lack of activity, your sleep, all these different things.
Fasting,
so, yeah. Like this is like, like I wear a Whoop device. I love Whoop. Yeah. But okay, I don't want to get in trouble with the BioLink's regulatory department. So this is not something that they've said, but I'm just imagining here. But if BioLink decides to go full on consumer and have like a consumer light version of this that tracks, like can like really well track activity, because like the main, like I don't know a number. I would bet you if you took out the runners and endurance athletes, the majority of people who purchased and are using a Whoop are using it because of their interest in recovery and sleep data. And so if BioLink is able to provide that kind of detail, but link it to metabolic state, I'll convert over from Whoop.
There we go. We've got a sale here, BioLink. Let's see if it materializes.
Only if I get to be the brand ambassador. Like Arnold got his deal with Zimmer. I think I would love to have a deal. I'm not Arnold, but like I think I can do a good job for BioLink.
I believe it. Yeah, I'm in support of this, and not just because you have me on your podcast.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the vote of confidence, Nick. All right, let's move on and sort of round things out here with our favorite. Maybe not our favorite. I don't know. It is my favorite. I think it's the thing a lot of people they listen in on this podcast, which is deals of the month. So deals of the month. So we'll start with the first one. This is like a really interesting one because it really surprised me. I'll be honest. So like CoMind raising a $60 million Series A. So led by Plural and Angelina Ventures, CoMind is developing non-invasive brain monitoring technology. The Series A brings a total funding of for over $100 million. And CoMind is one of Europe's most well-capitalized neurotech startups. The reason why this matters, millions of patients can benefit from brain monitoring without invasive procedures, a massive unmet need across neurocare. Only a small fraction, about 200,000 just in the United States, of patients today receive an invasive approach. Serious potential to transform brain monitoring. I thought it was super interesting just because, I'm definitely familiar with the neuromonitoring space and how difficult it can be. Mm-hmm. And so they've raised like a significant amount of money. And so it'll be interesting to see how they commercialize that technology and how well they do. I think they're commercial already. The other thing that's interesting is that their founder for this company is a Thiel Fellow. For those who don't know, Peter Thiel started a fellowship where I forgot how much he pays you, like a few $1 million. But essentially, if you qualify for it, then that means like you don't go to college and you start a company, which I love. And so the founder of this was a Thiel Fellow. So it'll be interesting to see how they do. What's your take, Nick?
Yeah, I think that, again, when you look at how many patients could potentially benefit now, I don't know that they're commercial yet. I think that they're starting the clinical, or they may have already started the clinical. So we got to see how the clinical data is. There is a bridge to cross when you go from invasive to non-invasive monitoring. Invasive works really well, but typically has, everyone understands that there. Non-invasive, how effective is this going to be? That being said, I think that the investors are saying that they're confident that this is looking like a significant opportunity. In LSI scoring, Compass scoring world, a Series A round over 15 million is considered an outsized, and it would get like top marks effectively. So here we have one that is 4x that, a Series A round that is 4x top marks. Hope the capital goes a long way to bringing this much needed technology to the market.
Yeah. So best of luck to the team. We'll see how they do. It'll be exciting. Next, we got Atacor. I think I'm pronouncing it. Atacor Medical securing $75 million for extravascular rhythm management. So Atacor's technology delivers pacing and defibrillation without leads inside the heart. The funding supports pivotal U.S. trial. The reason why this matters: got $11.5 billion CRM market that faces high complication rates from traditional leads. So Atacor's tech could redefine the category. 10 to 15% of implanted devices experience lead-related complication within 5 years. Nick, your take?
It's great. Like this is that round, I think, that's going to be taking them into the commercial world, if not a pivotal clinical trial. You'll have to forgive me for not knowing that off the top of my head there. But when you look at these devices, not only are the complication rates, that's pretty significant. There are hundreds of thousands of these devices implanted. They're big businesses for Abbott, Boston Scientific, Medtronic, pacing and defibrillation. So this is a great way to kind of differentiate, provide that life-saving therapy that these patients require, and avoid the limitations of the traditional devices. So I love it, and congrats to the Atacor team.
Yeah, and we'll see again. That's in a very hot segment. So potential acquisition target for some very big and interesting strategics. Not a mini strategic, but a big strategic.
Yeah.
All right, next, shout out to a friend of the pod, one of the few founders I've had on twice, actually, and that's Cody Simmons over at Dermasensor. They've raised a $16 million Series B. They are a developer of a handheld AI-powered cancer detection device. They raised a fresh round led by Peer 70 Ventures. The reason why this matters: early detection is key, and this technology could help primary care providers identify skin cancer in seconds, potentially reducing unnecessary biopsies. 50 to 80% of biopsied lesions are ultimately benign, while many malignant lesions remain undetected. It's a powerful tool for streamlining care, ensuring specialists see the patients they need to see while opening up a new revenue stream for primary care. I love this deal. And just a little background story on how cool this is to see. I've been talking about Dermasensor for almost 10 years. So before even I had this podcast. And the reason why is that they take the skills of a specialist and scale it to primary care. Okay. And so primary care, I think, is the new area to fund because it's the front line of medicine. And traditionally, not a lot of procedures, primary care physicians don't make a lot, right? But they can start making a lot of money this way. So ultimately, the reason why this is great, sure, physician is going to open up a new stream of revenue by using this device in their office. More importantly, though, is going to affect thousands, if not millions, of patients, because rather than coming in and think about when you have a lesion on your skin, what ends up happening is that first it needs to be noticed, and by the time you notice it, it's usually big, and then you have to get a referral to a dermatologist, right? Which, maybe that takes a month or 2 months or 3 months or 6 months. I don't know if you try to schedule yourself for a dermatology visit. A lot of them have this waiting list, right? And then by the time you biopsy, all these things, so much time has passed, right? And so, and of course, if it's a malignancy, it'll progress. Now, with the Dermasensor device, which is handheld, the primary care physician just pulls this out right at their clinical workstation, puts it on the site that they need to check, and it'll just tell you right away, this requires a referral to a dermatologist or not. It doesn't diagnose or anything. Yeah. And so it's great because, again, adds a new revenue stream for primary care, opens up a referral stream to identifying these patients earlier. And then at the end of the day, it solves a huge problem by getting these patients the care they need sooner rather than later. amazing story. And I will say, like, Dermasensor has had such a, like, this is why I had Cody back on the show, is that they've taken a sort of a B2B e-commerce approach in terms of how they're marketing the device, in terms of running paid ads, doing demand generation, etc., to really pack their pipeline with customers and potential adopters. So a big fan of their team. Shout out to Cody and Ryan and their entire team for the great job that they're doing. And also great list of investors behind them too.
Yeah, definitely. I don't have quite the same history with Dermasensor. I did have the privilege of talking to Cody a few years ago at the LSI Spotlight Studio at LSI USA. What was that, 23, I believe? I had Cody come in and he brought out the device, showed me how it worked, told me the story.
Cody's carrying that damn thing everywhere, dude.
I know, right? And it's super cool. I love what it's doing. I think that it fills a much needed opportunity. There's a huge need for this, and so I'm very excited to see them getting the continued recognition and support. And it kind of we'll kind of tie it back to our earlier talk on Q3 fundraising kind of being at a low, and there being those lulls and rounds under 30 million. Here we have a much needed Series B, and then the next company we're going to talk about getting a nice little start to their journey.
Yeah, good segue. So Petal Surgical, spelled Petal, like a flower petal, raises $10 million for incisionless surgery platform. And here's the interesting thing. So they're essentially pioneering a histotripsy-based incisionless surgery, modality gaining rapid attention. Many of you might say, wait a minute, I heard about something like this. You did, because Jeff Bezos and his office are the ones who made that $2.5 billion acquisition of Histosonics. Okay. This is backed by K50 Ventures and Draper Associates, which is a very well-known and respected venture capital firm. The reason why it matters, so Petal enters a fast-emerging space that could make traditional cutting in surgery obsolete. Again, Histosonics has been on the run between its acquisition and recent $250 million raise. And then Petal is one of the few other companies that's active in the space. Shout out to Prash, who's the CEO and founder of Petal. One of the reasons why this is so interesting for me is if you think about Intuitive, okay? And what Intuitive is. So there's a couple things. Intuitive dropped the surgical, like, from their name almost 10 years ago. A lot of people don't realize that. Okay. And if you listen to Gary Guthart's keynote, former CEO of Intuitive, who's now chairman, you can find that keynote on LSI's YouTube page, or just look here in the State of MedTech. We have it as well. He kind of talked about how, like, the robot is kind of not exactly a commodity, but, like, it's not the most important thing. We have to think about, like, the care that's being delivered, right? And so when I was at AUA, the urology conference, the big urology conference, that's like the conference that Intuitive dominated, right? That's the way they made their big splash over 20 years ago. When I went there, Nick, and I was walking around and I talked to different urologists, not MedTech people, urologists. I said, hey, what's the most exciting company in this space? They all pointed to Histosonics, okay? Because they use histotripsy to, essentially ablate tumors non-invasively, right? Okay. And one urologist just said, like, those guys are going to put everybody else out of business. Okay. But now they've been acquired. So, like, we'll see how that, does that help them or does it hinder them? And it's a big enough space for another company. And so I'm really excited to see, like, what, what Petal has. And, for Histosonics, they're really focused. Their indication, I think, was for liver, liver, and I think the next one was kidney. So does Petal have a different indication they're going to be going after? I don't know. That could be a really
you could find out, because Prash is going to be doing a keynote with Fred Moll.
That's correct.
Next March
at LSI USA. Every year, you guys outdo yourselves.
Where these guys are going. you can hear directly from them. So looking forward to it. I think it's awesome to see more of these companies early on getting involved in pursuing the development of this technology and really the commercialization of it, because histotripsy has been studied for like 20 years now. It's like a 2-decade-old technology, but really just getting started as of about a year or two ago with histosonics and the Edison system. So one, we have this interim period where it's too early to crown histosonics as like the king. They are first to market, but the long-term clinical data hasn't come out yet on the effectiveness of the technology. And I think we're a few years away from that. And that's going to be really telling. So it's exciting to see more all that to say, if you're developing a technology like this, keep going. Like, this is just the start of something new here, and it's super exciting, and it feels so futuristic to say incisionless surgery. I could think of so many unique opportunities to deploy something like this. So congrats to the Petal Surgical team, and looking forward to that keynote next March at LSI USA.
Yeah, same here. It's going to be really, really good. And the keynote title is Making Healing Human, Reimagining Surgical Standard of Care at its Core. And again, to have like a founder like Prosh on, who's the CEO of Petal, and then of course like a name like Fred Moll, who's
legend.
Since legend synonymous when it comes like when you hear surgical robotics, you think of two things: Intuitive and Fred Moll, and that's because he was the founder of Intuitive. So it's gonna be really, really exciting. So just kind of closing out. So October reaffirmed this key trend for us: consolidation and concentration in medtech. So capital M&A and innovation are clustering around proven technologies and commercial stage players. Compass data indicates that while early stage funding tightens, mid to late stage companies with a clear market validation are capturing record valuations, as we've seen with the deals and where everything's moving. You have Boston Scientific and J&J reshaping their portfolios, surgical robotics accelerating, and neurotech commanding investor attention. MedTech's next growth phase is here, and Compass is really a tool to track it. I want to plug Compass just real quick for those who are interested. Compass, essentially powered by LSI, is getting a major update. Over 10,000 plus startup profiles with proprietary data, industry deals, every industry deal, and the entirety of LSI's market forecasting data sets with AI agents to supercharge your research and analysis workflows. You don't have to be like an investor or analyst. Even if you're a startup founder, having access to Compass is, one, affordable, but two, more importantly, can really inform the kind of decisions you'll make in your business. So can't stress it enough. Go check out Compass. You can go to lifesciencemarketresearch.com and look for Compass. Am I good on that, Nick? I got the URL.
I'd say you're pretty good there. Yeah, we need to get our own standalone webpage.
We need to get lsicompass.com or something.
Yeah.
Scott and Henry, we need to get that. Make this
once
easier.
Once we finish this 2.0 update this quarter for the platform and the work you're going to be able to do in it, that's the next thing. We're going to get that website ready.
Absolutely.
You're just locked in on getting the tool into such a state that everyone's going to be excited to come in, use it, and empower the work that they do day in and day out. So
totally.
Thanks, Omar, as always, for having me on.
Any last thoughts and words from you?
Gosh, this went over an hour, which is always good. It means we had a lot to talk about, and I feel like we didn't even touch on so many things. We touched briefly on the histosonic stuff, but that $250 million round, there's been so much that's happened this month that this Q4 doesn't show any signs of slowing down or lulling. It's just full steam ahead. So looking forward to recapping it again with you next month.
Absolutely, Nick. Thank you. And thank you all for the listeners. If you listen to the show, do us a favor. We have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, I think, if we go across platforms in terms of downloads. But we haven't hit over 1,000 reviews. So do me a favor. If you're on Spotify, go give us 5 stars. If you're on Apple, give us 5 stars. Write a word or two about a line or two about the show. It really means a lot. You're watching this on YouTube, subscribe, share this with a friend. And as always, we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Thanks for checking out this episode. If you want to do me a big favor and join so many other people who have helped grow this podcast, take a second and look below. If you're on Apple, give us 5 stars and write a short review. If you're on Spotify, just give us 5 stars. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. And most importantly, if you can, subscribe. We release so many different episodes that you may miss. Be sure to subscribe and turn your notifications on. You get extra points with me if you subscribe across all 3 channels. Thank you so much. And if you felt like this episode helped you, send this to somebody who'd really enjoy and appreciate it. Share and spread the love. We'll see you all next time.